What's up guys, Tea Party Percy here and welcome back to a new Lost Ark Guardian guide. In this guide, we're gonna take a closer look at Elbergast, the Guardian with too many skills. This Guardian has so many different skill patterns and so many different phases and one-shot mechanics. That's why we're gonna focus on this guide, especially on the one-shot mechanics and most dangerous skills. And of course, I'm gonna briefly explain the combat items needed. As always, I won't explain every basic skill of Elbergast, otherwise this video will be 30 minutes long. Without further delay, let's get started with the combat items. Apart from the healing pot, the first combat item required or suggested is the Panacea. I will explain later why Panacea is required to avoid dot damage. Next item in the list is the Scarecrow. This one can be used after a transformation if there is an impairment check and you just want to focus on impairment instead of dodging. Put a Scarecrow, let the boss focus the Scarecrow. Meanwhile, you can focus on impairment and downing the boss as fast as possible. Last but not least, we have the bombs with impairment. There are quite a few options for that. And of course, this is once again needed for the impairment check. There will be a lot of impairment check related skills, and if your team doesn't have impairment, as an example, if you don't have destroyers, warlords, blasters or any other heavy impairment class in your group, it might be necessary to have the impairment bombs. Moving on, it's important to know that Elbergast has 5 different forms or shapes. First, you will encounter him in his basic shape or the general shape. And after that, there will be quite a few situations where he can randomly evolve or transform into a different shape. There are 2 melee shapes, one with the crown. Crown is the thing above his head. So one of the melee shapes will have a crown above his head, a ring, and the other one won't. The same thing applies also to the 2 shapes while he has a wing. The one will have a crown and the other one won't have a crown. In this case, once again, I would rather call it a circle above his head, but according to Inven, the Korean forum, it's a crown. All those different shapes will have a slightly different attack pattern, and they will also have a different one-shot mechanic. Once again, those transformations either happens at the beginning, like once you encounter the boss, after a few seconds he will have a shield around him and transform into one of those 4 shapes, and after every escape he will also transform randomly into one of those. Next, we have the red orbs, which will spawn frequently randomly around the boss. The entire party needs to pay attention to those red orbs and destroy those as fast as possible. If you don't destroy those orbs fast enough, they will buff the boss for the entire fight. And if he eats enough of those orbs or consumes enough of those orbs, he will be able to one-shot most of the classes even with his basic skills. So please pay attention to those orbs. There is also a negative effect if you destroy those, but it's still better than buffing the boss, which is for every 3rd orb destroyed. Once again, pay attention in the background to the footage which I'm showing. Every time we destroy an orb, there will be a debuff which will appear above the mana bar. Once the debuff reaches 3 stacks, everyone in the team will burn for 15 seconds. And this is why I recommended Panacea at the beginning of the video as a necessary combat item. Once you start to burn, just use Panacea and get rid of it. The last important thing about the red orbs, once you destroy a red orb, it will spawn a blue orb at the same spot. This one can be consumed by a player just by walking over it and will reduce the damage he takes from the next attack. You can use this blue orb to prevent getting one-shotted by specific skills if you fucked up some of the mechanics. The blue orbs will also disappear after a while, so you can't just leave them there for bad times, and even if you pick it up, it will only last for a couple of seconds. But let me make it clear, the red orbs destroy those even if you have to take the burn damage. It's better to take the burn damage than getting one-shotted by every single skill. Most of the random players will forget to keep an eye on the red orb spawning randomly, and of course the boss gonna get buffed after a few seconds and will start to one-shot everyone. Now let's talk about the first one-shot mechanic which you need to pay attention to. At a certain stage of the boss fight, the boss will spawn silver and golden orbs around him. You are allowed to ignore those until he flashes silver or gold. You have to pay attention. Below his feet at a certain point you will see a huge circle flashing up for 1 or 2 seconds, and if you missed it or if you saw that, make sure to shout it in the voice chat or write it in the chat in case your teammates missed it, because this is crucial. The color he flashes, as an example, if he flashes golden, you have to take the silver orbs or let you get hit by one of the silver orbs floating or randomly spawning around the boss. If you get hit by a silver orb, you will have a silver aura below your feet. And of course, if you took a golden orb, you will have a golden aura below your feet. This way you will always be able to see which aura you took or which is the one you have currently active. Now, listen carefully. If the boss flashes golden, you have to have a silver aura below your feet, so you have to take the silver orbs. If the boss flashes silver, you have to take the golden orbs. Because a few seconds after flashing silver or gold, he will do a one-shot mechanic, and only those people who are far away from the boss or have the counterpart or counter color below their feet will be able to survive. So if you see you fucked up and you won't be able to get the right color in time, just run as far as possible. But don't worry, after flashing silver or gold, you will have at least 3 spawns or 3 waves of orb spawns, and that should give you enough opportunity or enough time to get the correct color. If you get hit by another silver orb while you have a silver aura below your feet, you will get stunned for a few seconds, and you will also take damage. So try to avoid getting hit by the same color twice. And don't forget, if you have a silver aura below your feet and you get hit by a golden one, the aura will switch. So pay attention. If the boss flashes gold and you have already the silver aura, please don't run into any golden one, otherwise he will one-shot you. Number 2 on the list of one-shot mechanics, to be more precise, it should count as 2 different one-shot mechanics, but I'm gonna sum it up because it's similar, is the impairment check fail. After transforming into a different shape or after re-encountering, like once the boss escapes and you re-encounter him, you have to pay attention to the boss even more closely because you can miss this one. So pay attention to the glow around the boss. Because once the boss starts to glow blue or have a shimmering blue effect around him, you will have around 20 seconds time to impair the boss and down him. If you manage to do that, you will have a few seconds to deal free damage, and if you don't, depending on which shape he is, melee or the flying or the winged one, he will do a mechanic which will most likely wipe everyone. Once again, if your party doesn't have enough impairment, the blue aura or the blue glow is the sign to place the scarecrow and focus on impairment only, and if needed, just throw the bombs with impairments as an additional help to increase the chance of success. As mentioned earlier, in his winged form he will do a fire rain, and in his melee form he will do a meteor shower if you fail to impair him fast enough. In his winged form, once you impaired him, he will do a slightly different fire rain mechanic. This one is not a one shot if you do it properly. Once he flies up, you will see a circle below him. Everyone has to run into that circle and wait until you see a big AoE. That AoE will most likely one-shot most of the players if you're outside of the circle. But once that big AoE flashes or hits the ground, jump out of the circle, otherwise you will also take damage from the boss slamming to the ground. The last one-shot mechanic or team wipe mechanic in the list are the blue tornadoes. This one will only appear while the boss is on the winged face or shape. You won't be able to miss those 4 blue tornadoes. Make sure that you don't run into those, because if you run into those, they will throw you up and will give you a debuff. While the debuff lasts, you won't be able to get thrown up by those tornadoes again, but you need that. A few seconds after spawning the blue tornadoes, the boss will fly up, and that's the sign for you to run into those tornadoes. And of course, the boss will smash on the ground, and everyone who is not in the air will die. So my tip is, as soon as you see the blue tornadoes, don't focus on dealing damage. Just make sure that you don't get hit by anything and thrown back into the blue tornadoes. And once the mechanic is over, you can focus on damage again. But in case you get thrown into a tornado and get the debuff, you can use the panacea to remove it and then jump into the tornado once it's needed. Or if you don't have any panaceas left, just run as fast as possible away from the boss as soon as you see you fucked up. Now, before I talk about some basic skills which might hurt a lot and how to avoid those, I want to make sure that you know about the last two impairment checks. Those two impairment checks are pretty similar, and depending on his shape, either if he's a melee one or if he is a winged shape, it will be slightly different. In his melee form with the spear, he will pierce one of the players randomly and lift the player up into the air. Everyone else has to deal impairment damage to bring the player back down to the ground. If you fail to do so, the boss will start to slam the player around all over the places, and if it takes too long, he will die. It will be slightly different on his winged shape, because then he will grab the player with his claws and will fly around. While he is in the air, you can't deal any damage. Every time he lands on the ground, you have the small window to deal impairment damage and to break him. If you fuck up the impairment check during the winged shape, it will be even more devastating, because it will slam the player on the ground and will deal AoE damage to everyone around him, and that will hurt a lot. So make sure, once again, focus on the impairment damage, and if your team doesn't have enough impairment damage, throw a few bombs at the right time. Last but not least, let's talk about some skills which can hurt a lot. Starting with the AoE eruption. This one has slightly different shapes and forms and animation depending on the shape of the boss. In general, most of those AoEs he casts can be avoided just by running away or staying really close to the boss. But there is one AoE eruption which will look different, and that one doesn't have a safe spot close to the boss. So in that case, you have to run away from the boss. If you can't see the difference between those, just run away to be on the safe side. Next, we have the laser. This can be casted once or 3 times in a row, locked onto a specific player. Just in case, if you are the targeted player, make sure that you don't run into other teammates. Try to zigzag a little bit to avoid hurting yourself or your teammates. Next one is the phantom attack, and make sure if you are a warlord, please don't interrupt this one. This is a big window for everyone to deal free damage as long as you are behind the boss. The boss will start to spawn a few phantoms charging forward, and he will be locked into the position. At the end of the animation, he will cast 3 phantoms at the same time and still in front of him. So as long as you are behind him, it's a big window to deal a lot of damage. The last 2 skills in the list, starting with the skill seal circle. If you see a red circle around the boss, following the boss, stay in the circle. If you stay too long outside of the circle, your skills will be sealed, so you have to run back into the circle to use your skills again. So just in case, just stay inside the circle. Last but not least, we have the chasing tornadoes. Tornadoes will only spawn during his winged shape, so make sure if you have a tornado only chasing after you or a specific player, that player should try to run away from the teammates to avoid dealing damage to the teammates, and make sure that you have enough distance between you and the tornado, otherwise you will take every second damage. That's it. Simple, right? I hope this video was helpful or useful to understand the mechanics of Elbergast, and if you liked it, leave a thumbs up down below the video, and if you don't want to miss any guides or videos for Lost Ark as a preparation for UNA release, subscribe to my channel and click on the notification button. Thanks for watching, have a nice day, your Tea Party Percy.